Hi everyone, and welcome to our Navigating the Maze series on employability. I'd like to introduce myself as Kate Bowman. I'm the Prevention Information and Advice Lead, and we sit within Adult Social Care and Integrated Services at Newcastle City Council. And Lauren, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yes, hello, I'm Lauren Hoy and I'm one of the Prevention Information and Advice leads along with Kate at the council.
So both of us sit in adult social care, as I said, and we're responsible also for the website Information Now. So that's how most of you may well know us. We'll talk a little bit about that. But today we're running the Prevention Information and Advice Network. Now, we established this network when we moved into the council from the voluntary sector in early 2019, and we ran a number of network events which in those days were face-to-face, and we had between 200 and 300 people over 6 or 7 events, and we ran those events on all sorts of subjects, including customer services and patient relations in the hospitals. We talked about the Business Services Authority, we looked at advocacy, and we also covered mental health and how to support somebody in a sort of making every contact counts sort of way in terms of mental health. And then we moved into the COVID period, and we decided to relaunch the series as a series of webinars. And we were asked if we would focus on dementia. And so the series included research and innovations in dementia. It included how to get help through the occupational therapy team, how to get equipment and aids, the Ostara services, and also everything from care homes to home care and extra care or assisted living services. So that was a series that we ran last year, but this year we were looking at what area we thought would be important to people. And in the context of COVID, we were really aware of people losing their jobs, of furlough, of the impact of universal credit. And we were also really aware of how many people were using the food banks. So we run the food banks pages on Information Now for everybody. So we decided that we would look at employability. But just to go back a step, why do we think all of this is important? Well, our job is prevention and information. And at the heart of any organisation is up-to-date information, which really does underpin collaborative working. So what we see as important is to connect everybody in the city, residents and people working in the city, to the things and the people that they need to know. We see information as important as empowering us. It increases our confidence and gives us a sense of control, as well as enlightening us by increasing our knowledge and understanding and enriching and extending the reach of what we already know. So we're really wedded to the idea that information is important. From an adult social care point of view, we also want to focus on preventing crises before they happen. So we look at reducing and delaying the onset of social care needs by giving people timely information early on. And by looking at how people use information now, we can see what is going on in the city and what people are looking for. So we can see that people are looking for more information on child benefit, pensions and pension credit. We can see that people are looking for affordable credit, and we can see that people are also looking for accessible toilets in the city. So that kind of information helps us to keep Information Now as an updated resource for everybody. So we're a central hub and we're trusted in the city. We signpost to local services and information, and a lot of online events at the moment, and what we hope will be lots more opening up of face-to-face and collective events and activities in the future. I think what's important to remember about Information Now in particular is that there is a dedicated team maintaining and developing the resources. And one of the nice things about doing the employability session with everyone today is that we will learn something and we will be able to update our resources as a result of that. And even just promoting this event to our wider community has led to people saying, did you know we did this? So, you know, the Angelou Centre and various other centres have got in touch with us and said, actually, we're involved in employability too. So that enables us to update our information. So today's event includes the welcome and introduction by ourselves. And then we're going to move on to Newcastle Futures with Kelly and Jen, who will introduce themselves. And we will have an online break, so everything will remain open. You just need to mute yourself, go and make a cup of tea and come back in 10 minutes. So we'll indicate that at the time. Then we're going to hear from Stephen Williamson about the Supported Employment Service. And then from John Boland at CNTW. And right at the end, we're going to hear about the Health and Social Care Academy, which has really proven quite successful in the last 6 or 8 months that it's been going. So why did we pick on the subject of employability? Well, as I said to you at the beginning, we're really aware of what's been happening in the city. And we all know that employment leads to a much more secure lifestyle and financial independence. Employment is empowering. It means that we have choice of housing, choice of what products we buy, what services we buy, how we live our lives. We also know that employment can give a sense of purpose. So we're certainly not saying that if you're retired or you're only volunteering your services, that doesn't give you a sense of purpose too. But employment definitely is linked to sense of purpose and feeling that your time is well used. From a more economic point of view, we know that employment is important in the recovery of the nation and of the city, and that a contribution in an economic sense also enables people to contribute to the health service through national insurance, contribute to social care now and in the future, and also to spend their money, which enables the economy to recover. So employment really is important in our city. Now, we have quite a lot of challenges nationally and in the city, and I'm going to show you 3 slides. I'm going to focus on the Newcastle information. So we work with the active inclusion and financial inclusion services in the city. And we know that we have over 35,000 residents on universal credit right now. And that's a 50% increase from March 2020 to now. We know that we've given over 2,000 people a debt advice. And we know that there are a lot of cancelled debts and that sort of thing that have been going on during through welfare services, citizens advice and other organisations. And we know that over 50,000 people are using food banks in the city. Now that 50,000 just comes from West End Food Bank, which has distribution centres across the city. But I think many of you will know that food parcels have been delivered through Food Nation, through East End Food Bank, and through many other sites, including mutual aid groups. So we know that there are a lot of issues with poverty, which is a context that's really important when we're looking at recovery and we're looking at employment. So we know in Newcastle right now that we have 5.7% of people unemployed. Nationally, that's 4.6%, although London is much higher at around 7%. In the northeast, we know from DWP stats that we have 130,000 people looking for work and 24,000 preparing for work. So those are people perhaps coming off furlough, universal credit, and going back into the jobs market. And third, we also know that 19% of Newcastle's population has a disability. Now, the term disability is vast, and I think we all know that. So it covers everything from mobility to a learning disability, to mental health problems, to hidden disabilities, to visual impairment, hearing disabilities, etc. So it's a massive group of people, and 90% of Newcastle's population, according to our research in Newcastle City Council, has a disability of some kind. We also know that 24% said that coronavirus had affected their ability to work nationally. And we also know that disabled people were over a third less likely to be employed than non-disabled people during the period of 2019-20. So we know that that is the context in which we're launching this employability series of webinars. Now, in terms of Information Now itself, as ever, we try to help people find information quickly and easily. And we've had quite a few articles under our work and retirement section for some time. But in the last week or two, we've updated the Looking for Work article, and the Support to Prepare for Work article is a new one. And we're really happy for people to comment on those pages and tell us if they're useful pages in the future. So we really welcome your support and your contribution. So that's me just launching a little bit of context to this series. And I'd now like to move to Newcastle Futures and Kelly and Jen talking about their work. Thank you.
Hello everyone, thanks very much for having us and inviting us here as well, Lauren and Kate. We just want to have this opportunity to provide you all with information about our service, and Jen and I will both be talking through the slides as well, just so that we can give you an overview and a summary of the service that Newcastle Futures offers. So if you just want to go to the next, just go through the next slide, that's great, thank you Lauren. So who we are. Newcastle Futures, we're a not-for-profit organisation and we've been around for some time. We've been based in Newcastle for over 15 years, and the main point that we want to get across is our ethos, which is to deliver a holistic service and support customers through their journey, either into employment, further education or training. And we are able to do this through funding, through specialised projects that we have and that we're involved in. And the aim is to be able to provide opportunities to people from a diverse range of socio-economic backgrounds. We're able to link in with lots of organisations and other partners as well as we do this. We couldn't do it on our own, but our advisors do deliver one-to-one support, and it's either on a blended with digital support and face-to-face appointments or fully digital service. Obviously with the pandemic it was just digital support, but we are now phasing back out into our outreach work, and we're based in Newcastle at the moment in the Skills Hub, and also the Beacon at the west, in the west, and in the east we're currently in St Martin's, and we're just making plans to move further into libraries and other community venues, so that will all be happening within the coming weeks. And just with regards to our criteria, it's just about thinking that we can help all Newcastle residents of working age who are unemployed or underemployed, so they're on a 0-hour contract and they're wanting to increase their hours, or facing threat of redundancy and have the right to work in the UK. And the next slide, thank you, Lauren.
So following on from what Kelly is seeing in the previous slide, what we do, because we're employability, and I'm sure there are a lot of organisations that work in employability that do very similar things to what we do, which is the usual things like CV and job searching, so on and so forth. but it's more about how we do it and what our approach is to that, which is what Kelly's saying about our holistic approach. So obviously a few of the things on the slide are there, but I'm just going to pick a couple of things out specifically, such as assisting with job applications. A lot of our customers, as I'm sure everybody can relate to, are very intimidated and find these very daunting. So some of our customers can be very confident and comfortable in doing a job application, which they just need the reassurance to have it reviewed. And other customers need a lot more of that one-to-one support, whether it be us actually as an advisor making up interview questions or competency questions that they would then practice how they would answer that in an application for us to then come back and review their progress and obviously support them in how they can adapt it and make it better. That can be done face-to-face or on a digital video call. The other things that we do is identifying and breaking down sort of interpersonal and external barriers, which I'm sure that we will be speaking about throughout the presentation. Interpersonal development, confidence, self-esteem, self-belief, that kind of thing, again, is on that one-to-one basis, which is very much bespoke to the customer, as well as external barriers, whether that be financial, whether it be environmental. Those are things that we do obviously target as well. Even though we work employability, it almost comes hand in hand. And the final thing just to touch on is we do have ambassadors that are previous customers of ours that have moved into employment education or training, that have been so appreciative of the service they've received. They are now using and utilising their own time and volunteering it whilst working or in studies to support existing customers that maybe want to move into similar fields that they're in, and giving them that support to actually show it is achievable, which we found has been very, very insightful.
And just to touch on that, sorry, just before the next slide there, Lauren, I just wanted to highlight, because I know Kate mentioned about the making every contact count. So our previous slide does have the making every contact count bubble on there, because the majority of our advisors went through the making every contact count training last year. So we do try and signpost and make sure that we are opening the doors of other provision, regardless of whether it's talk about employability. If someone's said in a conversation with an advisor they want to stop smoking, then we would be really willing to signpost to the smoking cessation information that's available. And the other thing is that we do follow the NHS 5 steps to wellbeing within our interview framework as well. So we are encouraging people to connect with others, be physically active, learn new skills, giving, volunteering, being mindful, that sort of thing, feeding into the health agenda as well. So it was just to touch on that. But this next slide really is just a visual to highlight sort of the funding that we have received and that we're grateful for, and some of the projects that we're involved with as well. So we will cover a bit more about that as we go along, but I just wanted to highlight at this point, for those that don't know, that Newcastle Futures, we do have two main key stakeholders, and that is Newcastle City Council and also Job Centre Plus. We've had some advisors and a manager come over from Job Centre Plus since the inception of the organisation, and they've helped form it, but they continue to deliver with all of their expertise. And from the council side of things, we are supporting with the Jobs at Skills Hub portal, and that's a new portal, if you don't know about that, that came about through the COVID-19 and the want to have some kind of provision for all local providers and employers and obviously residents of Newcastle to come together and be able to promote job vacancies, work trials, work experience, that sort of thing. So we do support with the management of that as well. And then this slide really is, it's not all of our partnerships that we've got set up or that we work strongly with, but it was just to highlight again that, we work with a wide range of partners, and some of our projects are entwined with some of these. For example, Your Homes Newcastle, we work really closely with them on our on our working homes contract. But just to go back with Newcastle City Council and maybe share some information that people might not be aware of, is with Newcastle City Council, with all of the construction building that's going on in the community, or the different communities around, there is a 106 agreement that is put in place for any sort of contractor that wins the tenders there. So for the construction companies, we support and help with tailored pathways, and that's a developed partnership with local communities, colleges, contractors. We've got the key stakeholders that we support there. But just to give an idea, some of the construction companies that we work with are Keep Moat, Toland, Robertson, and at any one time we could be involved with 40 sites. So when we break that down to an advisor level, the advisors support the individual customers with accessing suitable training, so access to CSCS training to get the card to go on site, just doing general CV writing, interview prep, and maybe even accessing funding for workwear as well on that. So that's a big thing that maybe some people might not know about, so I wanted to mention that. Okay, next slide. Thank you, Lauren. And then it's just a breakdown so people are aware of the face-to-face employment support that we offer and the digital support that we offer. So I mentioned earlier that we work really closely with Your Homes Newcastle. So the Newcastle partners for the North of Tyne Working Homes project, which is a wider profile project across the North of Tyne area. We are part of that within Newcastle, and we are supporting residents and social landlords to offer employability support. So we do this through our advisory service, and we're reaching out to all landlords that we can, and obviously Your Homes Newcastle are supporting their tenants directly as well. And then the next slide, please, Lauren. Thank you. So the other high profile project that we're involved with is Wise Steps, and Wise Steps is aimed at those people who just need that little bit of extra time. They may be having difficulty with physical, mental health issues, that sort of thing, and they just need that slower pace support to help them to prepare and get ready for work. So that's our face-to-face support that we offer. If you want to move to the next slide, Lauren.
So the next piece of support that we offer is Tyne Online, which is a digital service. And I think first and foremost, people can get very intimidated by the idea of digital and feel that it's something they need to be very experienced or confident in order to be able to utilize a digital service, which in this case is not the case at all. The Tyne Online service is something that is catered to customers that both want to maybe develop some digital skills, but also already have digital confidence and empowerment in that. The Tyne Online service is a one-to-one support system, which is catered to anybody that is living in Newcastle that is underemployed or unemployed at the moment, that is seeking for a new career path or a career change, or opportunities, whether it be moving into education or development, that is from the safety and comfort of their own home, which is ideal if they are working, because they can work it around their own schedule. And it is very much that bespoke service that we have incorporated throughout all of our advisors. But it's definitely something that's very, very nice to have in their toolkit, to know that if a customer moves into a job from a previous or a current project that they can still work with Tyne Online project to get a job or a career that they really want later in the future. Next slide, please. So the Widen Your World Online are tutorial sessions, and they are no longer than 20 minutes, usually more like 15, but at max 20 minutes that as advisors we have in our toolkit to support customers that are maybe looking to get a bit more insight with employers, whether it be to see about what their first day at work might be like, regardless of what industry they move into, what to expect, or it might be looking about how their digital footprint on social media can impact their opportunities. But these tutorials are very much user-friendly, interactive, engaging, and like I say, they're very much time efficient. It's not something that's too intense, but it leaves its impact, and the feedback that we've had from these sessions has been not just surprising, but it has shown that the sessions do actually make the impact that we want them to, and we have had customers go away and actually make the changes from those sessions. And as you can see, we've got example tutorials on the bottom, like LinkedIn and video calls, as well as remaining safe online. Next slide, please. So the Yes Youth Hub, I don't know if many of you are familiar with this. I would assume some of you are, especially from any Skills Hub meetings that you may have attended. But the Yes Youth Hub is something that's it's a double barrel. It's a Facebook page that stands for Youth Employment and Support, and it caters to 18 to 29-year-olds in Newcastle, which we operate, but it is supported and funded, I suppose, for lack of a better word, with DWP and Job Centre Plus. And it's to engage customers, or even external customers that aren't ours, into opportunities, again, whether it be employment, placements, apprenticeships, education or training. And the big difference with this page that we feel is a key factor is the fact that it's allowing customers to use their own voice on the page to tell us and tell DWP what they feel like is missing in the area, whether it be a lack of training here or a lack of opportunities there. It allows them to have a voice and have that voice be heard, which again is something that we really, really value because of our MEC training, and we find it can be useful, and job opportunities get posted on there as regularly as we get them. The other reason that we use this is when we are attending Skills Hub meetings that are catered to the youth initiative across the city, it's something that is starting to get utilised, and it is about sort of virtual events as well as real life events that we're aiming to get up and running as well. So that's what the Youth Hub is. Next slide, please.
Thank you. So we're going to just sort of give a little bit overview about vacancies and opportunities and the provision that's out there really. So I touched earlier on about the jobs at Skills Hub and it being set up following COVID-19 and bringing local provision together. So it was just really to say so far, we've had 822 job seekers register on the portal, and we've had 247 support services register. So that's 169 employers and 78 providers. And we've created 734 opportunities on the portal as well. And I've been told at any one time there is upward of 100 live opportunities, whether that be vacancies, work trials, provision. So the more people we can get to go on there and register, for an account and set up, whether it's customers, training providers, employers, the better, because it's just centrally resourcing all of the opportunities in the one place that we can go on and have a look and hopefully support people to move into work or into the right training that they're looking for. So next slide, please.
The Jobs at Skills Hub, sorry, not Jobs at Skills Hub, that's just what Kelly's been speaking about. The North East Jobs Board is another Facebook community group. It is another online platform. However, the difference between the North East Jobs Board, for those that aren't familiar with it, and the Yes page is that This is obviously for the entire of the northeast of England, and there is no age limit on this category. It is a case of anybody that is in the northeast that is looking for opportunities, they can access this. And the page that we operate and that we manage has about 9,000 members, and that includes a vast amount of employees that post on there with vacancies and stuff as well. So it's a really good tool again to have in your toolkit for your customers as well as advisors. Next slide, please.
And an additional portal or email alerting service, I should say, is Futures Talk that we offer. So we've got lots of partner organisations subscribing, but people can subscribe to this through our website, and we host it, but it's to offer information around vacancies, events, policy, training, labour market news, digital support and funding. This is something that we've had right from early on when setting up, and it was very useful. Obviously, there's lots of new things coming up now, and especially like the Info Now website that's really growing and developing and offering a wide range of provision out there. But at the moment, we're continuing with Futures Talk, and you can subscribe through the website, but you can actually select what you want to see. So if somebody was only interested in information about labour market news, then they could say that that's all they're interested in, and that's what would be forwarded. So there is that opportunity to subscribe for the partners that are on here today if it's going to be of interest to them. Next slide, please, Lauren. And we just thought we'd give you a little bit of information just briefly about the statistics. We have been around for 15 years, well, upward of 15 years, just over. We've supported 19,500 residents plus, sorry, since inception of Newcastle Futures, and 57% of these have gone into employment. But I just want to make a point here that not all of our customers' end goal is to move into employment. They are on their own journey, and depending on their circumstances and situation, we have supported people into just voluntary work, into training, into further education. So there's lots of different reasons why people come into Newcastle Futures and want the support. So approximately 25% of our customers are those that have gone into the additional signposting for the training, volunteering and further education as well. But because this is around employability, we just wanted to give some figures there. Okay, and then next slide, please, Lauren. And then finally, just a little bit about our customers. We've just got two stories about a couple of customers that we've supported, and it's more about just sharing with everyone the support that they've had with regards to their journey. So Kaylee, she was a single parent and was getting sort of meetings with the job centre because a child had turned 3 and she started having to make preparations to go into work. She was really concerned about the welfare of a child if she went into work. It was daunting. She was on a legacy benefit income support and had to then be shown by Nicola to navigate around the universal credit system, setting up direct debits. She hadn't done that. So as part of the support that Kaylee got around just the general employability of CV, interview prep, a lot of stuff happened with her where, because Nicola knew from Futures Talk that Reviving the Heart of the West End, one of our partners, were promoting a course, a confidence course in the local area for her, with also a financial budgeting course that she could move on to, but also linked was an employer interview as well. All combined by working together, she was able to successfully gain employment in a care role. But the biggest barriers that she had were the financial inclusion around making sure that her rent would be okay from moving from one benefit to another, when she would be paid, how long she would have to wait before the universal credit account got set up, and closing down the income support claim. So Nicola was able to guide her through all of that, link her in with an appointment with Your Homes Newcastle, so she could speak to somebody for about her rent and making sure all of that would be sorted. And it just wasn't just the CV job and end of. Nicola's supported her up to 6 months with going into work as well, because sometimes that can be obviously a really difficult time for people, and especially with all of the change. And Kaylee needed support as well with finding suitable childcare, so Nicola was on hand with that as well. And next slide, please, Lauren.
Okay, so I know that obviously time is very quickly running out, but I'm just going to briefly kind of touch on Bill Bear's case study. He actually worked with one of our other advisors, Jill, and at the time he had been full-time employed. He was very much living his life, very active in the community, and then unfortunately health issues did start to impact his employment, which in turn made him unemployed, and it's one of the reasons that he ended up working with Jill. And as you can imagine, very reluctant to kind of go see a doctor about any of his health issues, because I think sometimes we all feel that ignorance is bliss and it'll sort itself out, it'll be fine, but it was impacting his livelihood. And Jill really was trying to encourage him to go to the doctors, really listen to the story that he had and the issues that he was facing, and just felt that it was severe enough that he did need to go see a doctor because of the impact it was having. With, I think, a little bit of reluctance, he did end up going to see a doctor and felt so much more encouraged. Obviously, the doctor spoke to him about what his health issues were. They put a plan of support in to support him and help him, which he then communicated and felt trusted enough to Jill to actually feed that back to her. And she was able to incorporate that into her approach with that one-to-one support on how she can help him move into work now that he's addressed his health issues, but still support him in a way that is supporting his health as well as his livelihood for employment. And because of all of that, he has actually moved into employment and he's once again employed. And as you can see on the slide, he had very kind things to say about Jill and the support that he received. Next slide, please. So how to refer partners, it's pretty much a straightforward process. If you have customers that are interested, obviously you can feel free to get them to contact us directly, or if you want to contact them on their behalf with their permission, that's fine. If you are emailing, we would need a little bit further information, you know, a telephone number, a name, just so we know who we're contacting. If there is any specific times that would be best to call or not to call, you know, those would be the things that we would just need to know, again, just to ensure that we have that contact with our opening hours and stuff as well. Next slide, please. And a customer can self-refer, so they can refer by going onto our Newcastle Futures website and self-referring through the Tyne Online portal, or you can contact us through the Facebook page or a Twitter page. Again, there is always somebody operating these communications, whether it be telephone, email, Facebook, carrier pigeon. There's always someone that is there to make sure that somebody is receiving support. And certainly if we feel that we can't help as an organisation because of the footprint that we've had without the community for so long, we've worked with some incredible organisations externally that we have referred to if we feel that we can't support the customer, because that is the forefront of our focus. The last thing that we ever want to do is hinder somebody. We want to help them, and sometimes that means it's not us, but we know somebody or an organisation that can. Okay. And next slide, please. And that was it. Any questions?
I think there's definitely been a few questions in the chat there. I'll read a couple of them out to you. I think Kate asked, and I think this was in relation to the Futures talk, what kind of things do you post? Does it mention salaries, low wages and greener jobs?
Yeah, well, there is salaries posted, because if somebody has a vacancy and they want that promoting, we will send that out. So it's whoever sends the information in to us, we will have a look at it and obviously screen and then send out. But yes, definitely, vacancies, jobs. For example, recently we had the fisheries contact us, and it was about an apprenticeship with the fisheries, and it was a great opportunity where some young person could go in and live in with the training and everything down Whitby, and we were able to promote that and spread the net, if you like, wider for them, to try and attract the right person. So that there's a huge range. We've got over 300 email subscribers on there, with a wide range of local events, community events. Sure Start, Newcastle Children and Families now, they promote a lot of their stuff. A lot of our partners, just whatever events or jobs, vacancies, training, that sort of thing, go on there. But we'd be happy to promote more. So anybody listening want to join and add information through the circular, please do.
Oh, fab. I know that we've received Futures Talk for many years, and you circulate the Information Now newsletter as well.
Yes.
So that helps widen our reach as well. So
yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Another question from Deborah. Would you be able to share your list of employers and their contact details, please? And she's given her contact details. Deborah's from CNTW. And we're going to hear from her colleague John later in the session, because it might be a chance to potentially work together. They also provide individuals placements for people with mental health diagnosis.
Right, okay. So Deborah, I'm not sure if Deborah was asking about it for the 106 agreement and some of the construction stuff that I mentioned earlier. Is that what you were interested in, Deborah?
Yes, and hello, I'm Deborah.
Hi.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Yes, it was just really to see if you could share, and as Lauren said, we'll maybe be able to kind of collaborate as well, and share, different kinds of types of information, I suppose.
Yeah, what I'll do is we've got Donna Barker who sort of heads that, so I think it would be great if I could link you in with Donna.
That would be great. Thank you.
Great.
Kelly.
Thank you.
Fabulous. And then Kate had one more question. Is there a difference in demographics using Facebook?
I'm assuming that's between the North East Jobs Board and the Yes page. The demographics, this is where sometimes there is a little bit of an overlap, but what tends to happen is the Yes page is opportunities that offer Newcastle. The North East Jobs Board is for opportunities that cover all of the North East. So we encourage any customers or non-customers that are on the Yes page to also follow the North East Jobs Board, because although I think some people feel like you need a passport to go to Sunderland because it's a million miles away for opportunities, it's actually only like 25 minutes on a metro. So it can actually widen their net rather than, narrow their view of what opportunities are out there. So the demographic itself isn't different, other than the Yes page is for youth, so 18 to 29. The North East Jobs Board is pretty much for anybody looking for opportunities, but it's the radius which it covers that helps them.
And I think I would just add in there as well, our advisors are able to have their own Facebook page as well. So because we're really wanting to digitally empower people, and that's another part of our agenda as well, wherever we can, the advisors would support their customers. So it's a wide range of people to go on to Facebook and maybe have an appointment with them for the first time of them setting it up, and actually do that as part of their digital upskilling or digital empowerment as well.
Yes, Julie, it is free.
And if anybody else has a question, feel free to pop it in the chat, or if you would like to raise your hand and we'll jump over to you. You can unmute and ask your question. I think that might be everything then. So, sorry, Julie's got one follow-up question. Do you support Show the Salary?
Sorry, what was that, Lauren?
Do you support Show the Salary?
on vacancies.
I think that
Showing the salary on vacancies.
Yeah, sorry, yes, that's what I meant. Obviously, within the charity sector, we're very keen on making sure that any vacancies advertised have the salary listed, so applicants can make an informed decision if they apply or not. So just interested if that's one of the requirements for listings on the pages.
To be honest with you, Julie, we are very particular about organisations that post. We limit, because we have the luxury of managing both of those platforms. We do limit and filter what appears to be legitimate opportunities that will have the information required against pyramid scheme opportunities or sort of, it just don't seem as maybe legit as others. We do filter it. So again, it's because, like every organisation, we're very conscious of promoting our reputation, and we can't and won't jeopardise that for a potential opportunity that might not be legit. You can imagine we do get quite a lot on there with so many members, so it can be difficult to obviously vet all of them, but we do try our absolute utmost to filter those as much as possible, because it's not just external customers on there, well, external residents I should say, it's our own customers as well. So we just want to make sure that it's everything that's on there is authentic and real as it should be.
That sounds great, thank you.
Yeah, and with the Jobs at Skills Hub as well, we've got Charlotte and Gavin who are working full time on that, and they're supporting and they see everything that comes through. So that is, it's very modern.
Great. So I'll move on to the slides. I'm just going to turn off my picture of me.
Right. Should I get started? Yeah.
yes, I think, should we just have a quick show of hands to make sure that everyone's back? If you would like to raise your hand to let us know that you're back. That's great. Fab, thank you. I think we are. Got about 8, 9, 10, 12. Yes, I think most people are back now, so I think we're good to go. Thank you. And I'll mute myself.
Okay. Hello, I'm Steve Williamson and I manage supported employment service for Newcastle City Council. Supported employment services is part of Active Inclusion Newcastle, which is also part of integrated services as well. So if you do the next slide, please, Lauren. So the service is basic. It's made up of kind of three areas. So we'll have Nature's Landscapes, which is a grounds maintenance service, which employs people who've been supported employment services service users. It does all of the directorate's grounds, and it also takes on contracts as well, with the concept that it'll break even with paid work as well. And although we've froze them during the time of the pandemic, just because we can't have too many people in one van at any given time, but we normally have posts that we keep, that we give fixed term contracts out to people who have got no experience of employment, so they get a working reference and also real experience in the workplace as a paid job. And then there's Food Works Enterprise, which is a commercial catering enterprise that employs people who've come through SES. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, the main focus of that business is providing coffee carts into city council buildings, and there's actually no staff in the city council buildings at the minute, so all of those staff are currently on a furlough, which will come at the end of next month. But that's the concept. But they've all been the people that have come through supporting employment services as well. And then there's Foodworks Training, which, as well as providing the canteen service at Westgate College, provides training opportunities in a real life work environment for people who are hopefully will go on to be Work First service users and will support to get a job. The pandemic has had a bit of a major impact on that as well, and it's only literally just gone back last week. And then Work First supports people who are not in adult social care and refugees to find and gain and maintain employment. Work First is operated during the pandemic, but has mainly been having to do not face-to-face meetings with people, although we have got a space at the Skills Hub and have been since that started opening up, meeting people face-to-face as well. Do the next slide, please, Lauren. So I get the reason I've got this slide is what is supported employment, and I guess I think it has a very different approach to finding people work from what people would call employability programs, and I guess you're going to have a presentation from John and you're going to hear some of the similar things, because IPS has a very similar ethos to supported employment in the way that we'll go around helping people get jobs. So first of all, it's very individualized, and we would do vocational profiling. So this is kind of getting to know the person, and we would identify what their aspirations are, what their learning needs are, individual skills from experience, and job preferences. And that sometimes can be quite difficult with the people that we would work with, because they haven't had those experiences, and sometimes they need to be given the chance to find out what it is that suits them and what's right for them. And then employer engagement, and it's kind of a different kind of employer engagement as well. So I've worked on national contracts where there's national employer engagement, and for the people that we work with, that kind of doesn't work. Guaranteed interview schemes don't get the people we work with jobs. So it's very close engagement with employers in supporting the person that we're working with to get through the recruitment and selection barriers. So and we would generally aim to secure employment and training rather than training then employment. So things such as working interviews, so maybe negotiate that with an employer, rather than an interview situation that maybe not everybody will work with, but a lot of the people we work with would probably have a struggle to gain a job from. And then job matching. So job analysis is usually undertaken, so it checks out the assumptions made in the job description and the person specification thoroughly. Job analysis might point towards a way of carving together jobs and job descriptions that doesn't just suit the person's talents, but it also sometimes can really suit the employer. And it's getting that balance so that the employer's looked after as well as the person we're working with. And then in-work support, individually tailored. So it's where it's needed the most, and it's got to be a cost-effective use of resources. So we'll have plans for fading, so we wouldn't stay there all the time, but we don't necessarily close a case. If somebody's in employment and they don't need you anymore, but at some time in the future they did, we will go back in. So if recently someone that we hadn't actually worked closely with for 2 years was having a problem with their employment, and a worker went in and helped and resolved the situation for them, and then everything was all right. In career development, it's like I think it's one of those things. Not many people stay in the same job all their lives, but that's never really taken into consideration, I think. Or it's not quite often. It's not. I know there are services that do, but people sometimes want to move on. They want something better. They want to improve their situation, or they get just bored with a job and they want a different one. And yet again, we would obviously pick people up again and help them to do that. Right, and if we move on to the next slide, please, Lauren. Yeah, right. I wanted to share Derek's story because there's a bit about pre-employment training, and also unhelpful labels as well. I've kind of grouped them, and it's not all pre-employment training. It's terrible, but it's got to be appropriate for the person. About him gaining paid employment, and then the benefits to Derek's life, and what we learned from Derek's story, because the service we provided changed significantly about this time because of the things we're learning about people like Derek. So I would like to kind of share that. So if you could do the next slide, please. Yeah, so Derek, after a period of being at 2 local colleges taking part in employability training courses, Derek was referred to by a social worker to what was then called Capabilities in EGBO, now Foodworks and Workforce. Derek arrived with the label of being challenging, displaying uncontrollable bursts of temper, and had a care package of one-to-one support 4 days per week. So Derek stated that he wanted to gain work in either horticulture or catering, which he had been studying at the 2 colleges. Derek started doing training in capabilities where, as well as completing formal certificate courses such as food hygiene, health and safety, customer care, he received training in work ethics and teamwork. He was then supported by his Workforce key worker to do an independent travel training and find external work placements. So at that point in time, there was a lot of emphasis on external workplaces, which was a move forward from what had previously happened. But I think it almost becomes a bit like too reliant on getting the person ready rather than just finding the job and supporting them in the job to become capable in that situation. So you could do the next slide, please, Lauren. So in 2008, notice this is 4 years later, whilst Derek was in a work placement at Bell & Herb Cafe, his key worker commenced job search for paid employment opportunities on his behalf, supporting him to do work and interview at McDonald's. McDonald's offered Derek a 4-hour per week paid job. Then Bell & Herb, hearing this, also offered Derek a 4-hour per week paid job. Anyway, they had a wrangle over Derek keep offering more hours until Derek accepted a 14-hour per week job at Bell & Herb. Unfortunately, Bell & Herb closed 1 year later, and Derek was then supported to take up a post at McDonald's, who still wanted him. But he wanted to do more hours per week and was supported to do a 51-week paid work placement at YHN's Palatine Beds. They were so impressed with him that at the end of the placement, they offered him a permanent 24-hour per week job, and he works there still. Do the next slide, please. So I think the most positive things are the general benefits to Derek's life are immeasurable, not just his salary, economic security and financial independence, but also a positive life transformation. Derek went from a young man with little or no personal independence, receiving 32 hours per week, social care and carrying around some seriously negative labels, to someone who holds down a good job, travels independently, has an active social life and is a valued member of his community. And I think, just like I was saying at the beginning, what we learned is things did not need to take as long. Derek was more than ready long before we helped him to get a job, and we could have helped him to just do that earlier if we hadn't. We've done what I think just kept on doing what was done. You know, everyone at that point in time had that idea that that people needed to be work ready, and sometimes you're never really ready. I don't think any of us ever start a job feeling ready to do the job. You become confident, you become competent after you've started a job, not before you start the job usually. And anyways, the next slide, please, Lauren. So, all right, the thing of navigating the maze of my way here. So, people who are known adult social care, referrals can be made via a social worker. They can use the Eclipse system. There's also other professionals can use Gateway to make referrals into there as well. Although there's no expectation that all new service users will use the Foodworks training, all referrals for the service go through Foodworks, and the manager can be contacted there. Now the Vari, the manager there, she may just say, oh, somebody needs to just go directly to work first rather than go to Foodworks first. So it wouldn't make someone go there if they didn't need to. So yeah. And I guess the other thing to point out is, like, whilst Derek was 4 years at capabilities, on average, people are only about 7 months at Foodworks. It doesn't take that long. They can take up to 2 years if they're really struggling, but we're trying to move people through much quicker these days. And there's also those contact details, because obviously even professionals sometimes find it very difficult to make referrals through the systems that we're using, because they're not the easiest systems in the world to use. Yeah. And then for the refugee service, I'd actually even recommend contact with Carla in that contact there, rather than using the other systems. Although the LASLOs, the local authority asylum seeker and liaison officers, do use it. You do make referrals quite regularly through Gateway, and also the Job Centre Plus staff do also make referrals. So if somebody's got contact with those, then they can get a referral in. But as I say, she's open for phone calls if anyone wants to discuss. So we're just trying to keep it as simple as possible and not make the systems too difficult for people to refer through. But there's also the generic supported employment email. So if people have questions, they can post them on that generic site, and one of will pick it up within a week. So and that's it from me.
Fantastic, thanks so much, Stephen. There are a couple of questions, if you don't mind, in the chat. Kate asked, what overlap is there between supported employment and access to work?
Right, well, a lot of the people that we work with will use access to work. Yeah, it's we help people to make applications for access to work funding for things in the workplace. So yeah, so I guess that would be the overlap. Access to work won't help someone get a job, though. You have to understand it's about funding for travel to work or adjustments in the workplace. Yeah. So the person who was receiving the access to work currently at this moment in time, and bear in mind that it changes all the time. And what I would suggest is, if you're working with someone and you think they're eligible for access to work, apply for it, because quite often they give people, they'll say that doesn't fit with the criteria, and it does, or they'll say it won't, and then they'll pay the money. So yeah, but sometimes they also won't pay the money when something really, really does, and the appeal system's not easy to use. I'm digressing. Yeah, so if somebody has, you can, and officially it's supposed to be if somebody's got an interview for a job, or got a job, or an offer of a job, that you can receive that funding.
Thank you. And for the eligibility criteria for your supported employment service, I know you've mentioned you work with people who are known to adult social care and refugees. Is there any specific eligibility criteria for someone to come to your service?
If they're known to adult social care, or yeah, I think predominantly the referrals to the adult social care side are people with learning disabilities or autism. In particular, although we supported somebody just last month who had come through our mental health services, predominantly that's being picked up by IPS now, because the people that are known to the CNTW's mental health services are getting support through that. But we do sometimes get referrals through our social care side as well, and yet again, not as often, but people with physical disabilities as well. But yeah, it's not strict and fast, no. Yeah.
So it's mostly referrals coming through the social worker team, so it wouldn't necessarily be available to the public to refer.
Oh no. Yeah, please contact Fari if you know somebody, or if a member of we have taken self referrals as well. We'd have to check the eligibility, obviously. Yeah, but yeah, no, we do. And actually, probably at this moment, we're getting more referrals from other providers than we are from the social workers. So people who are already receiving social care provision from some other organisations. So yeah.
So could it include, so could it include someone who's got, say, maybe a long-term health condition?
Yeah.
Well, or yeah. That's fantastic. I know, I think I saw Deborah raise her hand. Did you have a question, Deborah? I think it popped up and then it...
Sorry,
Hello.
no, it was just I was telling you I was back from so
Sorry.
sorry.
No,
Hi,
okay.
thank you though, thank you so much.
And if anybody else has a question, please feel free to raise your hand or pop it in the chat. Kate, yes?
Yes, Stephen, I was just wondering what range of providers do refer to you? I'm kind of thinking that maybe Citizens Advice do, but do you get them through, I don't know, Rococo, Mental Health Concern? What sort of organisations are passing you referrals?
At this moment in time, and we're open for anybody that wants to, but at this moment in time, it's probably right. Well, other than some of the learning disability advocacy services like Skills for People, it's mainly independent sector providers. So people who are already providing social care support to people. So like, you know, when people live in supported living or that supported living providers, quite often they'll make referrals.
So do you think it might be true that the voluntary sector, who will be coming across a lot of people that you could help, probably don't know about your service?
Yeah. I think we're definitely certainly good. Yeah.
Yes,
I think
that was
I'm sure it's quite it's quite limited, the range, I think, but yeah, now currently we could take more referrals from different organisations. I'm sure we're missing a lot of people. Yeah.
So
I had some conversations with colleagues from YHN recently about the extra support services that they have, where they're for people with learning disabilities, where they're like sheltered housing, and we hadn't really linked in with that before, and there's some like 300 tenants who living in their properties who we could have been supporting, I guess. And we obviously couldn't work with them all at the same time. It takes some time because we haven't got endless amounts of service, but you know, I'm sure we're missing a lot of people.
Could you also just tell me a little bit about how Nature's Landscapes works? So how do people, let's say they need their garden doing, how do they contact you? How do they know about your service? I know you're on Information Now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I know that. But how do people sort of say to the council, you know, I really need some help with my garden, etc. And do you pay for it, or you know, is it?
The best thing wouldn't be to contact the council and say you needed help with your garden, because they wouldn't refer the person on to Nature's Landscapes. They'll probably just say they don't do it. Unfortunately, that's part of the sometimes the council's part of the maze, isn't it? The stuff is on Information Now. I could have actually added it to this slide, but Alan's contact details would be the manager at Nature's Landscapes would be the person to go to, and I can include that his email address and telephone.
So if you were one of the people on this call now in the voluntary sector, and you thought that they had come across, let's say they work for Search or something like that, and they've come across people who need this help with their gardens, can they contact Alan and say, Alan, this person really needs some help? Could the team go in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, the work outside of the direct grants is really diverse. They're very well. I mean, they get very good reviews as well for their actual grounds maintenance work as well. But yeah, no, it's very diverse, and most jobs will be considered. I mean, it may be that when Alan checks that it's not something we can do, or you know, it's just not going to work out. But yeah, he checks most things out, and usually, yeah, you know, he can. And obviously, there's sometimes that he's so inundated, they can't take a job on because they've got too much work on already. But you know.
Okay, thank you.
Can't hear you, Lauren.
Sorry, it didn't unclick then. Sean has just asked, is there a charge for people asking for the gardening work?
Oh yes. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Alan would do a quote before anything, but yeah, yeah.
Shona, I'll just tell you, I think it's reasonably competitive though, because they've certainly helped my mother-in-law a couple of times over the last 2-3 years. And yeah, they've been really good, and they've taken away the gardening stuff, which is great.
What we can do as well is make sure that we've got all of the referral information on Information Now. So after today's session, we'll be updating all of our employability pages and making sure we've got that all there so everybody can access that as and when they need it further down the line.
Yeah.
But I think that might be all of the questions.
I didn't include Alan's information in this because that's about you can't get a referral into Nature's Landscapes. You've got to go through Work First. That was all this was about. That, not about it. But yeah, like obviously that could be included.
Well, we'll just put a little sentence in on Information Now and explain how to contact people directly to start that referral process. So that'd be great. Well, thank you so much for explaining everything to us. And it was really great to hear about Derek's story as well. And I think we are now moving on to John's presentation. So thanks, Stephen. And I will mute myself. And
thanks, Lauren. And lovely to see Steve. Steve employed me for several years. So Steve, very nice to see you, and best wishes to the Support Employment Service, because very grateful to you guys. You helped us get IPS started. Hi everyone, I'm John Bolland from the IPS service in CNTW, the Mental Health Trust that covers Cumbria, Northumberland, Tyne and Wear. I'm hopefully going to give you a bit of a whistle-stop tour of IPS, where we're at, what we do, how we do it, and I'd really love to get some questions. So if you want to know more about a particular bit, please I can see the chat as well, so hopefully save Lauren a little bit of a job. But please shout out or pop your hand up. So really quickly, what is IPS? First of all, shamelessly, I've got to say, we're an award-winning service. We just won an award 2 Fridays ago, an NHS award for teamwork, for team working across all communities, and we were up against the COVID vaccination team. So I'd pretty much put my money on the COVID vaccinators, because they have literally saved people's lives over the last 2 years. But incredibly, and testament to the team, the judges picked our service. So incredibly proud of what the work the team have done over the last 18 months. So yes, what do? We focus on individuals, so very similar to the ethos that Steve described and colleagues earlier as well. We wrap around what we do. We wrap that around the individual. We go to people's homes. We build therapeutic relationships with people. We then think about what, in a kind of strengths-based way, think about that person's experience, their wishes, their aspirations and ambitions, and we go out into the community and engineer job opportunities for them. And that sounds fancy, but really we're just knocking on the doors of businesses, brokering relationships, and then getting that person placed into a paid job opportunity and providing support to both the new employee and the employer for as long as they both want. So this is by no means rocket science. In my mind, it's really common sense, but it works really, really well. And one of the reasons I think IPS works so well is that it's evidence-based. So it's one of very few employment support strategies that has been through randomized controlled trials, which is the gold standard in research internationally. And there's multiple RCTs that show that IPS is up to 2.5 times better than any other supported employment intervention, specifically with regard to people who are experiencing mental ill health. So I'm not trying to dunk on colleagues on this call, but particularly when people are experiencing mental health problems, IPS is the best methodology currently out there. And I'm going to go on to explain why in a little bit more detail, if it's okay to have the next slide, please, Lauren. So before we go into the nuts and bolts of IPS, how do we work? Does it actually work well in real life? A quick overview of where we're based. So the trust that I work for is a specialist in mental health, learning disabilities, and neurological disabilities trust. We work with everyone, children, working age adults, older adults, and we cover the whole of North Cumbria, Northumberland, Tyne and Wear. So it's a massive patch. It's huge. If it's okay, to the next slide, please, Lauren. We've got 21 staff who cover North Cumbria, Northumberland, Tyne and Wear. So we're a reasonable size service, and we're looking to increase the size of that team over the coming years because we know there's absolutely enormous demand for this service. The statistic which we commonly quote is that the stat I normally quote is less than 8% of people who have serious mental ill health, which is a horrible, sounds like a horrible term, but it's a diagnostic term that we use in the NHS to describe people who are accessing a particular part of the NHS. So you will hear us say SMI, serious mental illness, but really, you know, as a human to human, we're talking about people who have encountered multiple health barriers or disadvantages, which probably put them at a major disadvantage, both in terms of physical and mental health, and particularly in terms of employment, you know, income, and social interconnectedness. The stat I normally quote is that less than 8% of those people are in employment, but actually it's worse than that in our area. In some parts of our area, it's less than 5%. And yet, if you speak to people who have had mental health difficulties, a huge number would like to work. It's probably not a revelation to people on this call. You know, all of us want to feel purposeful and have, you know, something to look forward to, a means of earning income, of meeting colleagues and doing stuff with our lives. We don't want to sit at home and get better. We want to be out there in the community in some shape or form. And so IPS really seeks to address this. Our day job is helping people get jobs, but really it's about cultural change. It's about helping people understand their rights. It's about changing employers' attitudes to mental health and helping them understand actually your whole workforce has got mental health, you know, and this would be a sensible conversation to have about mental health. So 21 staff at the minute, but we're looking to expand that. And as you can see, that's very roughly mapped out with those blue dots there. We've got a small cluster of specialists in North Cumbria, a few people in Northumberland, a big concentration of people in Tyne and Wear. But we're looking to change that over the coming months and years, where it'll be hopefully a blanket of blue dots, which is better able to serve the populations, particularly in southwest Northumberland, where we currently have people our staff travel a long way to meet folk. If it's okay to have the next slide, thanks, Lauren. Oh God, this looks like a heavy duty one, doesn't it? Sorry for the boring graphs. Basically, this is talking about how we plan the service, and we have what are called access targets. So in order to try and chimney along that cultural change that we're talking about, we know that we could just stay the same size, but it's unlikely that we're going to affect the change that we really want in the communities in which we work, because we know of those people who are experiencing serious mental illness, you know, 80-90% of people would like some kind of paid job, even if that's 4 hours, you know, could be full time, could be 4 hours a week. They'd like to do something, and it could be voluntary as well, but we focus specifically on paid. And in order to do that, we have worked with NHS England to draw up these access targets. So you can see the graph on the left-hand side is showing the number of people we're aiming to see each year over the coming years, and it goes beyond 2024 as well. And we've broken that down per locality as well. So the graph on the right is showing in each of the areas that we work, we're aiming to see that many new people every financial year. So it won't take a statistician to spot that is increasing year on year, and really the trend is to seek to increase access so that more people have the opportunity to access IPS if they'd like to. And the nice thing about this service is it's not like mandatory, it's not a requirement at all. So no one's forced to do this, no one has to stay engaged with us. We really have a very, very low barrier to entry. If someone would like to talk to us about employment and they happen to be receiving care from secondary care mental health services, we go and meet them really quickly. So at the minute, it's normally within 7 days of a referral, and we can work with that person for as long as they require our support. And that, like Steve was saying, with regard to food work, so with the average there being about 7 months or so, we are probably around 4 to 5 months between meeting somebody and supporting them into employment. And then on average, we stay involved with people for 3 to 4 months once they're in employment. The idea being that we kind of fade away as they build up their social networks and build up their resilience and get into that routine and become financially stable. We start to fade away. There are some hard and fast rules, which I hope people are going to call us out on in the questions, in terms of while we, aspire to being a service that has no exclusion criteria at all. So, doesn't matter if you have difficulties with addiction, doesn't matter if you've never worked for 20 years, doesn't matter what your diagnosis is in terms of health difficulties, we would like to work with you. And the same goes for perceived risk. That can be a barrier sometimes in employment service, but particularly in the NHS. And we aspire to have no exclusion criteria. And the reason I say aspire to be is the only one which we'll have at the minute is you have to be receiving care from mental health services, secondary care mental health services, which I appreciate for some of the population is a big barrier, because you might not meet the requirements to receive support from these specialist multidisciplinary teams. So we're working with commissioners to see, could we, support people who are accessing primary care who were just under the care of the GP, and if so, how do we do that? So we're trying to think about how there are no exclusion criteria at all, and anyone, if they would like to talk to us, can do so. But yeah, we've got a little bit of work to do there. If it's okay to have the next slide, please, Lauren. So 21 staff at the minute. They're all called employment specialists. So in IPS, that's like the job title. And these are band 5 staff in NHS language. So it's an interesting banding, because normally in the NHS, if you're band 5 or above, you're classed as qualified, as in medically qualified or a nurse trained. So our staff are in quite a unique position to affect change, which is an exciting place for them to be. They're all embedded in community mental health teams. So all the faces that you see there, these folk are probably in a clinic or mental health team local to you, and they are physically sitting in that clinical team, having conversations every single day about employment. And the reason this is so important is that we know historically that employment was seen as something that came at the end of recovery. You have to be better to think about employment. It was a prerequisite of employment, in my opinion, that you had to be better. It's kind of like Steve was saying before about this whole idea of work readiness. And it's, in my opinion, it's a myth. It's not accurate at all. Like Steve was saying, the vast majority of us go to work and not 100%. I rock up at work 70-80% some days, and through conversing with colleagues and drinking coffee and feeling immersed in what I'm doing, I feel better as the day goes on or as my career progresses. And guess what? We should apply the same strategy to people who are experiencing multiple barriers and disadvantages, particularly mental health. That it's unrealistic to expect people to recover in isolation. It does not happen, especially if you're suffering a serious mental health problem. That if you're isolated and at home, stuck in a poverty trap, you've got limited friends around you, poor social network, very little purpose, how the hell do you get better? It's very, very difficult. And so these folk on the screen, when someone is referred to a mental health team in their patch, in their community, they will straight away be asking, can I meet with the person? Can we have a conversation about their aspirations, what they've done in the past? And really, we want to get to a point where every person who's referred to a clinical team, irrespective of whether they volunteer that they're interested in work, they get asked the question. Thank you, Shona. I'll come to that in 2 seconds. Because we really want to make sure that everyone gets offered the opportunity, because the vast majority of the time people don't know their rights and they assume, I can't work because I'm on benefits, or I can't work because I've got a diagnosis of schizophrenia. And we're trying to demolish those myths and help people pursue their ambitions on their terms. So very briefly, the employment specialist that you saw on that page, They're from very diverse backgrounds, and I'm super proud to say that we really practice what we preach, because 3 of our most recent recruits are people who've come through the service. They're people who've used secondary care mental health services, they've used the IPS service, and we employed them as Band 5 specialists because they've got the skills and experience, they've got the ethos and values that we want. So we actively employ people, and we get lots of people jobs in the NHS as well. So slightly boring slide, that's the service setup. At the top, you've got our service administrator, Deborah, who's on the call right now. Then we've got 15.5 employment specialists who are Band 5 NHS staff, 4 Band 6 team leaders, and I'm the service lead. And I definitely count myself at the bottom. I'm not just saying that in a slightly tokenistic way, but you know, the team really make all this stuff happen, and I get to kind of support that and try and prop them up when they go and get stuff. Thanks, Lauren. If it's okay to go to the next slide. So people might have heard, this is probably going to be teaching a lot of people on the call at Suck Eggs, so I'll try and whip through this fast. But particularly for people who might be watching this, future generations who might be watching this on the YouTubes, the stepped model of employment support is a very common thing that you'll see in employment services. Lauren, if it's okay to just hammer that button so that you go through, all the steps can just appear on the screen. Basically, the received wisdom used to be, particularly in the NHS, that there was a stepped approach to getting someone to work. So if the first step is that if the bottom stage is that someone's unemployed and the top stage is that someone's in employment of some kind, there was this received wisdom that you had to go through several steps before they could get there. And we don't do that. So we don't expect people to have to volunteer first, and we don't expect people to have to demonstrate work readiness. As Steve was saying, our experience is that most people, there are kind of barriers, there are institutional or societal barriers in their way, which they cannot, no course in the world is going to help someone overcome societal. I mean, if there is, I'd love to sign up to it. Societal stigma, you know, if you can help someone overcome that with one course, fantastic. But the reality is, if you've got someone who's experienced a hospital admission or a serious mental health problem and they've been out of work for several years, or they're taking a very strong medication which might make them a bit drowsy, how do they broach that with an employer? How does someone who has just signed up to Universal Credit, how can they possibly know how to navigate the intricacies of the Universal Credit system, which I frankly struggle with, and it's my day job? You know, the things which we're helping people overcome are not about them being ready for the world. It's about the world adapting to their very specific situation. And so when we get a referral, we go and meet the person. It's a non-judgmental conversation. We're not wanting them to prove anything to us. We're not wanting them to hit some arbitrary criteria that we've concocted. We want to know what makes them tick. What are they interested in? What have they always wanted to do? Or what did they do before they'd been unwell? We then build that therapeutic rapport over a period of time. And to come to Shauna's question earlier, how much do we do face-to-face versus digital? The vast majority of what we do is face-to-face. Shauna will go to people's homes, or we'll go to wherever they're comfortable, because we know that if we ask people to come to us, we're probably introducing another barrier. I mean, we do appointments in clinics and things, and in libraries, and very rarely in job centres, but the vast majority of the time it's in people's own homes or in the community. So we'll build that relationship with them, we'll find out what makes them tick. And a massive part of this is therapeutic optimism. This idea that if you demonstrate to someone that you believe in them, guess what? They get better. I think everyone on this call is probably on board with that idea. But it's a big deal, I suppose, particularly in mental health services, because traditionally they may be quite risk averse. You know, we're talking about symptoms and what's going wrong, and, you know, tell us how you're feeling today and if you've had any unpleasant thoughts and things. So this idea that our staff are really focusing on a person's strengths and their ambitions, and then developing that therapeutic optimism, using that as a tool to help propel someone forwards, it's a big part of our job. We are part of MDT's multidisciplinary teams, so that's psychologists, psychiatrists, medical doctors, family therapists, community psychiatric nurses, peer support workers. Our staff sit in those teams there around those tables having those discussions. And this is probably critical to why IPS has been so successful, that if we think about the barriers that people are facing, the reality is it's very often going to be several things at once. not just one thing. It's never just employment. It's never just housing. So being part of a multidisciplinary team, you can play your part in tackling that, your area of specialism. And alongside your colleagues, you're really quickly moving someone forwards and helping them see that change is happening. So we connect with the person, build a therapeutic relationship, leverage that therapeutic optimism, be working as part of the MDT to move things forward. We then go out in the community and target employers. So we literally go and knock on doors. We attend business meetings. We link up with people over LinkedIn. We offer training to employers to try and incentivize them to work with us, mental health training. And based on those connections, we seek out a job that we think is right for our service user. So we don't ask people to apply for jobs through Indeed or, that I'm sure that's like totally relevant for some populations. But if we know that the people that use our services tend to have multiple barriers, which the HR processes of those companies do not cater for, why would we set them up to fail by saying, bang in an application through Indeed, knowing that they're probably not going to get shortlisted? The best way, and if anyone's watching this who's looking for jobs, probably the best way you can get job opportunities is by speaking to employers, or speak to your mates, speak to friends, family, neighbours, random people in the street. They'll know people who've got job opportunities, word of mouth, relationships with people. That's how you get jobs, and that's what our staff do. They go out, create opportunities with employers, and I think one of the reasons why we get so many jobs, in the last 4 months, we've helped 65 people get into paid work. And over the last 18, by Christmas this year, we'll have helped over 300 people get into paid work who experience serious mental health problems. And part of the reason I think we're so successful is that businesses like us because we've got high integrity. Like, we don't put people into jobs that we don't think they're going to succeed at. We don't negotiate them, to tick a box. We'll make sure that we're putting people into the right jobs first time, and that they're then supported and the employer supported. And that's what works, really improving people's quality of life and having that sense of hope, I suppose, about the future. Thanks, Lauren. Sorry, not a nice slide to look at and probably very wordy. This is probably recapping some of what I just said, that employment and health are inextricably linked. So in the NHS, we now talk about employment as being a health outcome. Might sound a bit unusual, but essentially this idea that, yes, the NHS is interested in your physical and mental health, but we're also interested in, have you had or do you have a job? Because we know that has a huge impact on your health and well-being. If you don't have a job, we know that being unemployed and having a serious mental illness will drastically affect your quality of life and the length of your life. People die up to 20 years younger if they have a serious mental illness and they're unemployed. And frankly, unemployment is, in my opinion, we should treat it as an epidemic, as a health epidemic, unemployment, because it's that much of a risk to people's health. There's massive demand for the service. You guys know all that. I won't go through that. Thank you, Lauren. Chimney is along. Are we any good? Really quickly, I'll whip through this. If it's okay, go to the next slide, Lauren. Yes, we're really good. Did you expect us to say anything else? No, this is an old slide, but by Christmas, so we've achieved 65 jobs since April, and in total, we've achieved probably 215 jobs or so, and by Christmas we'll have achieved 300 jobs. We've got a very high sustainment rate. So I've got the latest sustainment rate scribbled down here. Sustainment rates being the number of people that stay in employment or beyond 3 months and 6 months. So our sustainment rate at 3 months, 75% of people that we help into employment stay in employment beyond 3 months, and 71% of people currently, but that's going to increase, stay in work beyond 6 months. And we're really proud of these rates because, again, this is about our integrity as a service, that we're helping people into jobs that they want to stay in, and we're helping them to jobs with employers who know how to cater to their needs and bring out the best in them. A big challenge for us was the integration of staff into clinical teams. That's worked out really well. And in my opinion, COVID has not been as catastrophic as we thought it might have been in March last year, because I think really it's leveled the playing field a bit, because employers are really interested in talking about mental health. I'll quickly, if it's okay to go to the next slide, please, Lauren. This is all nice, and it's, yes, I'm saying that the service is awesome, but how can you validate that rather than my anecdotal waffles. We carry out published statistical analysis of the service. This is publicly available. So we carried out what's called a QPR, process of recovery, matched pairs analysis last year. So we started in January 2020 and concluded in December 2020 during a global pandemic. Great time to do some research into people's sense of recovery, because we were expecting this not to come out too well, given that the global pandemic had a massive detrimental impact on all of our mental health. And yet the statistical analysis showed a statistically significant improvement in QPR scores in all the people that we worked with. So you can see the orange bars in the middle there. We did this in collaboration with our colleagues in Tees, Eskimweir Valley, Tuve, who you'll see are the blue bars. And basically what we were looking at was, do people report feeling better in terms of their progress towards recovery after working with IPS? And if anyone's interested in this, I can give you much greater detail than this slide. But really, this was trying to generate, or at least analyse, evidence for what we already know anecdotally, that people really like this service. We conducted a poll of 100 focus groups. These were all independently carried out, so this wasn't me asking the questions under duress. These were assistant psychologists who were employed through a different trust, met with 116 service users to ask them some of these questions. I mean, they were asked all of these questions, but this is just a snapshot, and I won't read them all out, but as you can see from some of the answers, people really rated this service and were really interested in, the parts of the service that they found most beneficial. And this is a process that we go through pretty much on a yearly basis, as well as independent fidelity reviews. So it's a way of, quantifying and qualifying our quality. Are we doing what we say we're doing? And we'll make sure we publish this stuff publicly so people can call us out if we're not doing it right. If it's okay to go to the next slide, please, Lauren. Deborah, I wonder if, just for time reasons, we'll share these with colleagues on the call afterwards, or if people, I'm just thinking, well, we're going to read these out, but I'm conscious that it'll probably take quite a bit of time. But we wanted to share two. Deborah, do you want to say something? Sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say I can share them after the, after the presentation, if you like. If we haven't got time to read them out, or we can get them up on the information website as
Great,
well.
yep,
So,
we'll do that. Yeah. So we've got dozens and dozens of service user stories to tell you about. Zoe and Vicky's are interesting because both of them, I suppose, like give meat to the bones that I've given you of the realities of the reality of barriers people are struggling to overcome. Zoe hadn't worked for a period. Zoe now works in the NHS. And Vicky's interesting because Vicky's actually someone that we didn't get a job for. And I think this is the other thing I was keen to say today, that, I'm obviously here to say IPS is great and, the service is brilliant and I'm super proud of it, and tell you how you can refer to it in a moment. But also there's a lot of people who we meet who either, life events happen and they don't go on into employment, or they make different choices. And Vicky's one of those people. So through her conversations with her employment specialist, she decided that actually the thing that she wanted to do to get where she wanted to be was to go back to education. And this is another area that we're looking at developing. We're in discussion with commissioners at the minute about whether we can also offer paid employment support and or education, because we think it's really, you guys all know, it's really common. I think Steve mentioned it before as well, that people change their minds. People don't stay in the same career all their lives. And particularly our younger service users, but I suppose anyone of any age can decide, actually, I'd like to go and retrain, I'd like to go and do something else. So Vicky kind of talks about her experience of working with an employment specialist from IPS and deciding to go back to university. And sorry, I've done it the wrong way around. Vicky's talking about working in the NHS, I beg your pardon, Vicky, and Zoe's talking about how she had decided to go back to university with the help of her employment specialist. Sorry, Vicky and Zoe, they'll be calling us for that. If it's okay to go to the next slide, please, Kate. So really quickly, referral information. Anybody can refer to us. I said it earlier that one of the limitations is that at the minute we only are able to provide support to people who are under the care of secondary care services, so that they are community mental health teams or early intervention and psychosis teams. We are also going to be launching services with the Newcastle Addiction Service this year and with the Newcastle Arms Service. So ARMS stands for At-Risk Mental State. But frankly, we've got a very, we're chatty folk and we're very happy to speak with anybody. So if you've got a question, a query, either from a professional point of view, or if you're someone in the community who has had mental health difficulties or is experiencing mental health difficulties and you're having some barriers to getting into work, you're always welcome to email us or reach out to us. We've got a catch-all email address, ips@cntw.nhs.uk, and you can ping us an email and one of the team or myself will be back in touch with you. Thanks very much, Lauren. We've also got a newsletter. Oh, Shauna, I like where you're going with that. I'll come back with it. If it's okay, go to the next slide, please, Lauren. We've also got a newsletter which Deborah manages and people can sign up to. We've got a website which is all right, although we're looking to do a lot more extensive work. I mean, it's a good website, but we're looking to do a lot more extensive work with information now to kind of democratize access to the information that the employment specialists are collating. So particularly stuff about, if you have a mental health difficulty, how do you broach that with people? If you have had a conviction of some kind or contact with the police, how do you go about talking about that with employers? What are the best methods to get in with an employer, all that type of thing. So we're going to be working with information now, Kate and Lauren, to get that online. And the last thing is, we've got a podcast. Got to give a shout out to the podcast. It's called Working Better Together. You can get it for free. And if anyone would like to come on the podcast, anyone on this call, would love to meet you and speak with you, because the more we kind of talk about this stuff, the better. Lauren, have I gone over?
We have gone over a little bit, but I think that's okay. We've still got a couple of minutes to take. Okay. I know there was a couple of questions there from Shauna, and then if anyone else has any questions, please pop them in the chat or raise your hand.
Thank you for listening, and thanks for the questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It's great. So the questions from Shauna.
Shauna. I mean, well, Shauna's probably going to regret saying that in a public forum, I think, and this is being recorded as well, because I was just, it's a massive area, Shauna, that I'd say the vast majority of people accessing services do not know their rights, and an awful lot of clinician time is spent trying to find information, because obviously the benefit systems changing a lot all the time. We're about to experience a £20 cut in universal credit. So any kind of collaborative working would be extremely well received. And to be honest, it's something that we are talking about with CCGs, because we feel that we would be very interested, not just in the IPS service, but in probably a lot of mental health services in funding posts, and likely working with good people like yourself to occupy those posts, because... Sorry, Sean.
It would be so good. It would be so good for us. We've tried to go to GP surgeries and sit and wait for patients to turn up, but as you say, it just doesn't happen, because they need that handover. They need to work with, people who are supporting them. So that's the fantastic bit about this, that it's so personalised and it's absolutely genuine, and there's confidence from the start with these people, and that's where we'd want to add to that. It's not frightening. Come on, we'll do the PIP form. It's 44 pages long, but we do this all the time. Don't worry about it. You're eligible. It's straightforward. We'll just get on and do the job. And honestly, every citizen's advice across the region would be more than happy to discuss that with you. It's great.
That's amazing. I mean, it's such a big part of it, because it often feels like people are having to make a binary choice between either benefits or employment, and often because our clinical colleagues aren't up to date with the latest information, they're not able to challenge that, or they don't feel confident challenging that and saying, hey, guess what, there's 29 middle paths that you could take if you'd like. So it's definitely what the IPS specialists do at the minute in clinical teams, that they're trying to raise awareness about the different routes and how you can get the best of both worlds. Sorry, Sean.
Just as a shortcut, we've got a refer. You can actually, it's linked into information now, but you can do referrals for patients or clients and straight into us. You just click the button on the website, and it's confidential, encrypted, and all of that stuff.
Fantastic.
And we have got a little bit of scope for home visits as it happens, tiny bit. But again, we could start to grow it on and see what happens. But we're really keen to help with this, because, as you say, universal credit and all these other things happening, this winter's going to be really hard for people.
Shauna, I'm going to run out of this office in about when this meeting finishes, and I'll be at are you at the City Library? I'll see you then in about 25 minutes, okay? And we'll get going. what was I going to mention about? One other bit of work that might be of interest to people. Well, has anyone heard of the Money Advice and Pension Service MAPS? Because we're trying to do a little bit of work with them. Oh, Shauna winced.
The national contract is up for grabs, and it's going to be absolutely nothing compared to what it was. And they're telling us that all debt money advice can be done digitally. So just that was a bit confident. Well, it's not really confidential, but everybody's going to lose debt advisors right across Cumbria, Pennine, Durham. The way it's going, it's going to be really good. That's why I raised that question about face-to-face, because we're fighting and fighting for face-to-face advice, particularly when it comes to debt and money, because debt and money problems and mental health are absolutely linked in. It doesn't a paper width between them, and what comes first, it's just awful. And we'll always need face-to-face advice because it works. It works for medical things, it works for advice, but that's not how MAPS. So if you've got an end to MAPS, if you can actually make that point, that would be really helpful to us.
I'll invite you along. So what we're doing at the minute with MAPS is that with Carleen Dowden, she's called from MAPS regionally. We're absolutely onto this as well, that we know that financial advice, debt advice, or just access to impartial, free professional advice for our service users is key. So we're going to be integrating questions into all the aim is across all clinical specialties. We're going to be integrating questions about financial health, because we know it's so impactful on mental health. So we're going to be rolling out a pilot in Newcastle starting in about a month's time. But I'll get you, if anyone's interested in being part of that, just drop us an email. But I'll definitely ping you an email, Shauna. And that's working with Newcastle CCG, Newcastle Gates at CCG, MAPS, Involve NE, who are a local charity who are going to be assessing, evaluating it. And then we're going to be piloting it in IPS. Actually in clinical basis, so asking people these questions and then saying, afterwards, how did you find those questions? Has it actually helped change things, etc., etc.
So I think just to round off today's session, thank you very, very much to all of the presenters. I've really enjoyed hearing about your service and how to refer people in. We've got some pages on information now that you might find useful, as in when you're speaking to people. So we'd like you to have a look at those for us, please, and let us know if there's anything that is missing, any services that you're aware of that we don't know about, anything that could do with updating as well, please let us know. So Kate mentioned our new page that we've just developed before this webinar, support to prepare for work. So that's all of your pre-employment services, your employability support. The looking for work page is one that we've been working on as well to update. And then we go into things like problems at work, flexible working, self-employment, redundancy, and then the different benefits that you could access as you're looking for work. And we also would like to publish a new article around enterprise and small businesses. So if you know of any services that we should be mentioning on that page, please do let us know. Or if you'd like to help prepare that new page, again, we'd love your contributions to that. So please contact Kate or I. And then is there anything that you'd like to add, Kate?
Well, we just picked out a few useful pages on information now. We always find this quite difficult because we've got 14 categories of information. But it's just to remind everybody really that we really do cover all the things that are kind of relevant and pertinent to the world of, as John was describing, really health and employment. So, making sure you've got the right benefits, making sure you know who to go to if you're looking after someone, you need some support, where to go if you need affordable electrical goods, all these things, and computer classes and IT. You can see the world has changed enormously. We were always becoming digital, but it got sort of pushed further, didn't it, during the coronavirus? And so we really want people to know where they can go and get that IT support. So it's great to know that Tyne Online, is also supporting people. It's not just saying you've got to be really good at this. It's sort of, we will help you in 20-minute bite-sized chunks to get better at using IT. So all of these things are on information now. We're always updating the pages. So please just keep looking. Also, we've developed a little bit more social media. So we're trying really hard to get more out on Twitter, Facebook, a little bit more on LinkedIn. I have to say we don't do as much as we could there, which of course is where we should be promoting all the employment work, in particular, because I think it's a great site for that. Obviously, we're doing more on Facebook. Also, just like John, we're doing podcasts. So, you know, we've got the Radio Tyneside show that we do, but we're also developing some podcasts. So, you know, if people want to get involved in putting something together where you're sort of holding a conversation, but it's not a visual conversation, it's just the audio sound, then just get in touch with us, because we're always really happy to work with people.
And you can access any of the podcasts through the news section on Information Now as well, and our archive of newsletters. If anyone would like to subscribe to the newsletter, the Info Now news, it's published on a Friday, totally free. Just go onto Information Now and pop onto our news section, and you can subscribe directly there. And there's our contact details as well, should you need it. But thank you so much to everybody for coming along today.